and thank you for the TCD space to receive us. Uh, I'll talk about my research that has measured the environmental, social, and economic aspects in degraded pasture livestock, productive pasture livestock, both in open pasture without trees, and we measure a productive silvopastoral system with trees, and we make classification between these farms. But first, I will tell a bit of what to expect in this research. I will starting with some information about the livestock footprint. We're gonna have some highlights if livestock sustainable is possible, and I will present two research: one free methane beef, where we neutralize the gas methane emission through carbon sequestration, and the second one is how to change the landscape through silvopastoral, addressing for the three dimensions of the sustainability. But first, a bit of who I am. Actually, I majored in business back in 1999. I worked for ExxonMobil for a period, and in that time, I was young and it makes sense for me make a career in a larger company, and I was happy with that. And in some point, I started to think about my future. I got married, I planned to have kids, and the environmental issues started raising. And I thought I was in the wrong side of the economic business, in the dark trader side, and I have to move for the other side. And I decided to quit. My mom had a farm in a small city. I work in ExxonMobil in Rio de Janeiro. It's a metropolitan area. And I came back to my city that I was born to work with my mom in a farm. I should be the third or the fourth generation of farms in my family. And as my landscape, a lot of livestock farms are degraded. So we need to start a new project there with new focus and making more money per hectare per year, because the money that we could do with the average profitability wouldn't be enough to pay my bills, pay my mom's bills, and make the return for the business. I also want to say that my natural environmental is the field, is on the farm. It's not here speaking, especially because I'm speaking in my second language. So I try to make it simple, and if you have some difficulty at the end, we have some questions and you can speak better. So I will start in showing 2018 report, strategic options for US, Brazil, and China reduce beef consumption. Those three are the largest beef consumption per capita per year. US 28 kilos, Brazil 27, China just 4, but large amount of people eating 4. And this is a climate focus and world results institute, and each kilo of beef produce 46 kilos of CO2, 550 demands 550 liters of water, and it pollutes around 400 liters of water. Here it's the comparison between other source of animal protein, sheep and goats, porks, and chicken. And the beef is the higher one, the cattle is the higher one in intensive use. As also is the higher one intense in demanding of landing area, 214 square meters per kilo, against goats 27, porks 12, chicken 7. So that's true. You can find a lot of research around. Uh, the livestock has input a high footprint, and usually the matrix of degradation is starting in, we are going back in 200, 300 years. We had many places, we had forest, then we cut the forest, plant the grass, and for some time we had good grass because we had fresh organic matter from the forest. And with good pasture grass, we had the root systems going until 8 centimeters. Here 10, 20, 40, 60, and 80 centimeters. So one thing that I will highlight here many times, as the much more vegetation you have above the soil, you have under the soil. So when the pasture is degraded, you start losing vegetation above the soil, and you start losing root systems under the soil. So the next step of this landscape, we have a loss of organic matter above the soil and also in the root systems. And it can lead for a scenario of degradation, and some places we are having desertification almost process through a bad management in livestock. Here is the Brazilian map. Distribution of degraded lands in Brazil, around 7% of our pastures are degraded, some kind of degradation. In red, you can see degraded, and in green, not degraded. And if you can take a historical period of time, when you have our colonization process in the 15th century, you start using the Atlantic Plateau area. So this area was used first. And this area is more recently pasture converts. So is a cycle, in my opinion, and the other researchers that I'm working for, that this area is more degraded because start here first, then the same thing starting happening punctually in this new area. Here is a Embrapa matrix of degradation. Here it shows the time and the quality of the management, and here the intensity of degradation. So we start in this kind of pasture and ending in this other kind. The first thing that happens, we lose productive, we lose metabolism of the vegetation, we start to have bad productive, bad quality, losing soil cover, organic matter, we start to have more soil compactation and less water infiltration in the soil. And at the end, you start to have an erosion process. It's a picture very similar with this one that we can see. Addressing two social and economic aspects, this research finds some numbers about the net profitable per hectare per year, comparing the 2 stars of our agribusiness that are soy and corn per hectare per year, and livestock. So livestock is the lower money per hectare per year. So receiving less money, you can do less for your employees. You can have worse structure in your farm, and here you go for this kind of issues that are not just environmental. But do you need cattle? Cattle are in 49 industrial segments. We are used to beef, milk, yogurt, but as leather for bags, shoes, clothing. But it also is in the collagen from the skin treatment. Human special are using a lot of collagen nowadays. It's become from the cattle skin. From its glands, we make insulin for the diabetic people. Ice cream is made from the fats, and from the ligaments and tendons, we make gelatin for human consumption. So we go for a lot of things, and nowadays it's not only say I'm not eating more beef that I will get out of this cattle chain. But we have two kinds of production system. One that includes a higher degradation, and another one is a regenerative system. Usually feedlots have more impact in the environmental. It demands a lot of energy inputs because you need to plant and seed corn and soya and other things, use intensive machines in this process, logistic process, and a lot of research are saying that the energy balance in this category is higher, as also in the degraded monoculture system. But we have some people in Brazil, in US, Canada, and Africa starting a new approach that has been calling regenerative livestock, even though in monoculture it has pretty good numbers, and we're gonna go through it. And the next step is putting the trees, like one more layer of the system. We'll try to, if you can say what's the best production system, I would say a forest. But in a forest, I can do beef cattle, or I can do raising cattle. So if you have more layers, you are more similar to a forest, far away to a forest, but more similar, and far away from a monoculture without shadow, without any interaction. Maya has a researcher in 2009 that he measured the carbon in the soil. The monoculture the degraded monoculture lose 0.27 milligrams per year. The regenerative livestock AD on the soil 0.72, and the silvopastoral with regenerative livestock 1.5 milligrams of carbon per hectare per year. This is my farm, and what I'm holding is the leaf of the trees. So you can see the organic matter interaction in the soil. Not the leaves from the grass, but also the leaves from the trees. And there are a lot of connectives and of plant succession, plant interaction, and we starting calling that in syntropy. Entropy is a system that just loses energy, and syntropy is a system that always is recharging by itself. And the Time magazine also reinforced this point. This first line is the feedlots, and you can see the whole logistic process that it goes through. You need to plant the grains, to make the logistics of the grains, some equipment to feed the cattle, and we have just emission in this part. And the cattle also have methane and the other emission, but if you manage the grass, you can also add carbon in the soil in this process. So what's the point of science and the research that we are now? Since the beginning of the agriculture food production, all the systems were based in monoculture. We didn't have the environmental issue. So this was not one piece of the puzzle, environmental. The piece of the puzzle is make more, have more food. If you can do it in a small area, better. Better production in a smaller area. So monoculture, reductionist knowledge, people get very good use fertilizing, people were very good in how the seed was successful, and some model easy to scale, so the reproduction of this model would be very easy. Intensive use of fossil fuels, as in the machinery, as in the fertilizing, as in the agrochemicals. And so they input on the plant imposition performance by those chemicals and those techniques. It's like a domestication by power of that they made in the plant section, and it allowed to the soil a lower biodiversity and a lower life, because once that you are using a lot of inputs chemicals, the micro and microbiology get lower. And the end of the pasture is one situation like that. And what is regenerative livestock? What we are talking about? Nowadays, some functional food production hubs are emerging under the premise of paradigm shift, holistic approach against of reductionist knowledge, multiple plants or species in the same space, in the same time, and sometimes multiple animals, not just cattle, sheep, and pigs, cattle, sheep, pigs, and chicken. We are going through that. And it's a transdisciplinary and multi-topic knowledge, and has respect the plant succession and the plant interaction. The first thing is understand the context, understand the role of each plant, and act in that. And it allows a great biodiversity and soil organic life. So we started speaking about regenerative livestock without trees, and then we added trees in the next follow. I'm bringing the first case of study from Zimbabwe, Kenya. Some people here, I think, have heard about Alan Savory and Savory Institute. They are regenerating livestock, and the first step is the management must be holistic. The responsibility is the man. The cattle, the herbivores, was here for centuries, millions of time, and always have played a role. And now that the man has made the control from these animals, the man is responsible to manage them, attributing less impact from the environmental. So you have to have a holistic approach. Understand the environmental you're driving. You are driving a temperate area, a tropical area, semi-arid area. The role of the herbivores in the environmental, time grazing and time resting. It does not exist more grazing full time for these pastures. Is more important than the number of the animals. If you adapt the time grazing and time resting, is the first step for you to be successful. And diversification of plant and animal species in opposed to monoculture. Alan says that with or without trees, it can be regenerated. He is avoiding the desertification area in Zimbabwe through just management, and not to a new planting or new revolving the soil. He's just organizing the management, and he's having some good results. The next one is Pablo Borelli from Argentina. Do you know him? Pablo Borelli is one of the heads of the regenerative livestock in the world. And he explained us the pasture growth curve, metabolism, plant interaction, and plant section. Here is a plant that has been grazing, and this is the growing curve. So after graze the plant, you need to have a rest time, give a rest time for the area. With the rest time, the vegetation will grow above the soil and under the soil. But in some point, you need to cut and graze it again because other time it's gonna have an oxidation process, a slow metabolism. So you need to look for this curve and interact in the right point. And if you do it right, it's a carbon pump of vegetation growing pulse. So this is the first carbon pulse. When you graze, when it's ready to be grazed again, and you avoid oxidation, as I said, if you don't graze, everything's getting slow metabolism, and slow metabolism is lower carbon fixation. If you don't put the quantity of either of animals in the area, they are doing selective grazing, so you have this balance. They're gonna eat just what they want and leave what they don't want, so the area will be not homogeneous. Or overgrazing, that's what was happening in that picture that I show you, that is leading to a desertification process. So what's that carbon pump? So in my area, I have 6 pumps during the hotter months. This is a whole pump. So here the animal graze, and here is the resting time. As the vegetation grows above the soil, the root system grows under the soil. Once that it seeds, it's a sign of that's not going to grow anymore. It's mature, sexual, mature, and it will not spend more energy to grow more organic matter. So you need to graze, put the animals, and we start a new cycle. But now the the vegetation above the soil is shorter and doesn't need this large root system. So it relieves a part of the root system that becomes organic matter in the soil. These organic matters in the soil you have in the climate change, adding carbon in the soil, and you have been producing carbohydrates for the microbiology. And here we go again, starting a new cycle. It will be the second carbon pulse. So in Brazil, in my farm, I have 6 cycles during the hot months because I need 30 days of rest in there. So each 30 days, the cattle goes there and graze the area. When comes the 6 months more cold, I have just 3. So if I work well there, if I'm efficient, I have 9 carbon pulse during the year. This 9 carbon pulse will make my efficiency for carbon soil sequestration and for organic matter in the soil for the whole ecosystem much better. So this is a difference between a good management and a bad management. Sorry, this picture is from Bruno, my colleague from Brazil. I didn't have time to put here on the source, but the presentation is never read. And here is the right balance of time grazing and time resting, subgrazing, overgrazing, and optimal grazing. And once you can give more focus on animals and other one in the pasture and the ecosystems. So every time that you are giving your attention for the pasture, you are giving your attention for the soil, for the ecosystem, and for the all microbiology. Here is Arizona State University research. They are researching the south of Canada in Alberta, and this area it's storage 2.5 tons of carbon per hectare per year, more than the other control areas, and also allowing more 3.3 3.5 eats per hour of infiltration of water, more than the control area. So with more vegetation above the soil, we slow the rainwater velocity, more roots, you have less compactation, so you have better water infiltration in the soil. More vegetation has lower temperature, so we are talking about lower evapotranspiration, less water uh, evaporation from the soil. And these guys are going further. These guys are mixing animals. This is extremely challenging because animals is difficult to management, especially if you do more than one. But it's amazing too because he's doing cattle and sheep in the same area and also chicken. And the chicken has a portable structure and it goes like that. The cattle stay 10 days with the sheep in the pasture. After 10 days, he puts the chicken because the chicken will eat the manure larva. How to say the manure? The fly eggs that are protein, pure protein, and each animal has some better fertilizing in their manure. Chicken are rich in nitrogenous, pigs are rich in phosphorus, and here you go a better syntropy and a better interaction in those systems. So he uh, previously we used to take manure to the pasture. Now you take the animals to the pasture. It's a paradigm shift. He is in Georgia, nearby here, 4 hours north. I've been there, white wolf pastures. He is on the leaderships in US from grass-fed cattle. And also in Brazil, we have the same mix of animals. Uh, this guy is the first savory hub in Brazil. And as you can see, the pasture is not more a monoculture of just one grass species. You allowed more species because if the cattle doesn't like this kind of one specific, the chicken will like, the grass you like. And so the pastures now are looking like this. So you have more insects, you have more bees, you have more everything. This is a grass pasture. You don't need to be the best in cattle. You can be good in cattle, good in pigs, good in porks, and good in chicken. And with trees, trying to go further, trying to imitate the native forest, insert one more layer or stratus of vegetation. This is my farm. Every line is in a contour technique, and each line has a tree in 3 meters interval, and in the corridor we have 15. It's around 200 trees per hectare against the monoculture that has 1,100, 1,200. So it's a landscape transformation. Here is not more there. Here is in the other plain areas. How does it look like in a large landscapes? Here is a Google image. And here you can see a hill, and how does it, it's possible to slow rainwater. Here is my farm again. I'm putting the lines in the border lines. And you can see my whole neighbors are doing monoculture livestock, and I'm doing silvopastoral in these points. Can't you see silvopastoral there, over there? And what I'm trying to ask you to pay attention is the greener in the farm and the greener in the neighbors. Look, my farm has 400 hectares, and I had a similar area from the neighbor, and now I put 12,000 hectares, 30 times larger than the farm, and how the greener of the landscape is concentrated there. And if it's not the best solution, we are using eucalyptus. We are going to speak about that. If eucalyptus is better, if native trees are better. I'm not saying that is the best system. What I'm saying is that it's a huge step forward than the monoculture to silvopastoral system, even though with exotic trees for a commercial intent. And now I'm going for the research. The first one is the certification of enteric methane neutralization in beef cattle promoted by silvopastoral system. I don't know if everybody is aware the methane, where does it come? The cattle doesn't have stomach. It makes the digestion process by a rumen. The rumen is a stomach that doesn't have evolution during the millennia of years. So we have some herbivores that have stomach and some herbivores that have rumen. A horse has a stomach. So it works with juice, stomach juice makes the digestion of the grass. And in these animals, the rumen works in a methanogenesis process. It's a camera of methanol gas, and this camera with methanol integrates the grass. And for one hand, you have carbohydrates that will feed the nutrition of the animal. In the other hand, you have the isolation of this methane through the mouth. So the way to break the grass in available nutrition is through this methane gas. So it makes the livestock one of the largest GHG emissions in global agriculture. The first one came from fertilizing, 34%. The second one, 29% from enteric fermentation. So as we have a higher population of cattle, higher herd, you have a higher emission. And how do you make this neutralization process? We took only the root systems of those trees. Through some research, we found that 22% of those trees are roots. And we didn't take the fust and the crowd because we are talking of cycle of carbon, rescuing carbon from the atmosphere, stocking carbon, and flow. After stocking, what's going to happen with this carbon? Is it going to be relieved, or is it going to be secure stored for long terms? So the soil organic carbon is secured for a long time, and the other carbon are not secured. You can store it for a month, for 2 months, for a year, 5 years, but you can say in long terms of period that it's stocked there. And here is the graph. You had 6 treatments of eucalyptus, SPS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each color is the curve of carbon sequestration of those. And in red is the emission from planting those trees, planting the pasture, and from the methane emission. So we had the balance neutralization average between 5 and 6, and the latest one around 9 years could reach the neutralization process. So what this picture shows us, it depends on the management, it depends on the production system that you have. You can also have impact of the cattle and have benefits from the well management production system. And what happened with money? Because we are talking about environmental, social, and economic aspects. We sell the wood. So here I'm re-showing the previous slide from soya, corn, and livestock. And if you put regenerative livestock, we jump 2 times the net profitable, because these animals are more are producing more. And if you sell the wood, we have 4 times more money. So we get similar to the other stars of the agribusiness, and now you can solve the social problem. Now that you have money, you can address for the other issues. So these farms are gonna go for the next research and show what's happening social aspect in these farms. And what's happened in Brazil and the US, the consumers are uh, uh, they want to buy sustainable products, but they don't know where to find. It wouldn't be in Walmart or other markets. So it 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 puts more near the producer and the consumer, and we are cutting the chains of the segment. So before going there, we started this project in Brazil in 2016, the free methane beef. We put on the market the first world neutral beef. It has also the rainforest certification, and now it's been sold to Switzerland. We are exporting this car. This beef, and in this year it's arriving the milk, free methane milk, also in the market. We are a small project, about 600 animals a year. It's very few when related to the size of the market, but it can show that's possible to do it. This project was selected between the 12 best practices in Brazil against the. It's a group of work for sustainable livestock over there. And now I'm going for my PhD research and how to address these benefits for the social and economic aspects. So here we have the same farm that I researched. It's a Google image from 2009, and here the same area, the same picture from 2013. You can see here is the riparian area and is the nascent, the springs and the riparian area. We can't introduce the system 30 meters of distance of that. It's not in the best shape. You can see here it's better shape with more green than here, but we try to not get it worse, and as much as you can getting better. And the contour level again makes a better sense for everything. Here is the same farm, other picture. I'm not saying that's wonderful, but it's better for a wild animal go through this fragment of native forest to the other fragment through under the trees from the silvopastoral, even though eucalyptus, even though I'm just putting two monocultures together, than to go through an open pasture. So here is a whole valley of 8 hectares. Can you see this area? Here is the mountain turning point, and you can see a whole valley of 80 hectares before and later the silvopastoral system. And here the whole farm. Before just open pasture, and now silvopastoral system. So I think it's a degree. We are now in a new point, and we need keep researching to do it better with native forests, with more biodiversity. And here is the same value of 8 hectares projecting from the neighbor areas of 900 hectares. And how is the potential of transforming this whole landscape could be addressed. Here is the one picture of my area of degraded monoculture pasture, and there is a productive monoculture pasture, and we can go from that point from these silvopastoral producers, or from this to that, or we can go from degraded to productive. And for silvopastoral system, it just depends on of the management of the animals. And here is the difference of one tree in the area makes. And the welfare of the animals, 4 degrees less in temperature, lower speed of rainwater, great water infiltration, less erosion. And now I arrive in the indicators. The accumulated sustainability index put the first one, DMP, degraded monoculture, PM, productive monoculture, PS, productive silvopastoral. The conjunct of indicators put 0.42 for degraded, 0.61 for productive, and 0.75 for silvopastoral. The break-even of the sustainability is 0.7. So again, silvopastoral is not going pretty well and doing an amazing job. It's just making this whole to be a sustainable producer system. We address a multidisciplinary assessment tool, and we have research for 21 aspects and more than 100 questions from observatory, from presential observatory, from questionnaire from the owners of the farm, from the employees, for the stakeholders, as we took samples of the water, the soil, the biodiversity. I'm gonna show in more better subdivisions. This is the 8 macro indicators. We go from economic, social, management of the enterprise, soil produce, water, risk of drifting, management of production system, and ecological of agriculture. Production silvopastoral, production monoculture, degraded monoculture. The red line is the 0.7, so it's the break even. The more greener, the more sustainable. The lack of green is the degradation process between the transition of these 3 systems. So when you see it's greener there and getting a lack of green here, it's just show the degradation in each of points that we are measured. I would like to highlight for the parts that the man has directly responsibility: management of the price, management of the production system, soil produce capacity, management, and here again the same. So here's the social aspects, productive and sales price, diversification of income, profitability and security of investment, debt and financing, basic service, education, quality of the employment, farm management, access of information from the farm, waste management, recycling, and health and safety for the work. The same degradation you can see. And again, those farms were not having adequate information, even though adequate management. And here is in the environmental aspects. We go again from soil produce capacity, water quality, contamination risk, evaluation of degraded land, good production practice, good roads condition, quality of native vegetation, adequacy of riparian areas, adequacy of native vegetation, and diversification of the landscape. Again, the man has his responsibility in the yellow points. And what do I highlight the productive monoculture? Because it had a good soil produce capacity and a good evaluation of degraded land. So even though this monoculture farm, beef cattle farms, had few lands degrading and a good production, soil production capacity. So here is the soil use of these areas. I just want to show you in green is the native forest in good condition, the dark green, and the whiter green is in bad condition. So as you move from the silvopastoral 19% to the monoculture productive 16 and to degradate 10. So what happens in the pasture reflects in the native forest of these farms. They are having more degraded forest. And what happened with more carbon in the soil? We bioactivate the soil, have more carbon, we have more carbohydrate, we have more nutrition for this whole group here of micro and micro biology that will trigger for the soil food web. So we're starting producing more sugars, produce more carbohydrates, we're allowing more food, we are using less chemicals. So we are finding 3 times more life in the soil, in the silvopastoral area, or in the monoculture productive pastures than in the degraded. And we trigger a better production system, a better water cycle, a better carbon cycle, a better animal welfare, and a better cycle of nutrients. And I'm finishing, and this is one very good phrase that I would like to reproduce here from Savory. This sustainable livestock is based in the premise that herbivores have always existed and play an important role on of the ecosystem balance, grazing fields, cycling nutrients, and maintain vitality of the soils. In this perspective, environmental imbalance occurs due to an inadequate management of the animals introduced by humans, in which the decision-making process is disconnected from the environmental impacts. And the research reflects this. The farms that had better management, the farms that were looking for the cattle, for the soil, and for the soil ecosystem, having good grazing times, but good resting times, had a better sustainability. And we can do it with eucalyptus, teca, mogno, Australian cedar. We are large use of eucalyptus in Brazil. More than 90% are eucalyptus because it's a more easy-going tree. It accepts difference of biomes, weathers, and we don't lose too much on the planting. They have a good vitality, but we can make as a native forest, we do have some there, but it's not too much. And this have another point because the commercial trees with commercial intent, it's a highlight point of the economic improvement of the system. So once that you put native trees, you're gonna get better environment but lower economic. In this time, I wish that in 5 years, in 10 years, I can come here and say, no, now we are receiving for environmental service, so you are having more time with native trees. And the other problem is the eucalyptus and commercial trees have already the domestication process of planting and treatments very good characterized. And native forests is a challenge we are just starting. So for the search for a better product system does not end. For each contest, a custom solution should address for the local inputs, considering other types of arrangements, grass, trees, as well the shrubs as one of more system layers. This is a silvopastoral system. It doesn't depend on the trees. It's a leucena, and it has its arbust, and it works for biological nitrogen fixation and high protein nutrition from the animals. So the system can get better with trees, grass, and arbust as leucena. And how to do social, economic, and environmental. So we need to starting more for the eco, less for the ego and for the money. And we need, rephrasing Albert Einstein, we can't keep doing the same and expect for a different result. To start to doing different. So that's it. I'm here for the questions. And thank you very much.